Welcome to REST, which stands for Resiliency and Empowerment Seminar today. I am your host, Susan Gans, and I am the founder of Gans Strategic Solutions, which operates at the intersection of human behavior and business. For more information about Gans Strategic Solutions, please see www.gansstrategicsolutions.com. This show is about hearing from the leaders of small and mid-sized businesses as well as nonprofits. We hear about the journeys of these leaders, their respective organizations, and very importantly these days about how they're being resilient. Today, I'm so delighted to welcome to our show Rick Peck. And let me tell you a bit about Rick. He is the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation's Philanthropy and Donor Services team leader. He oversees all aspects of development, donor engagement, and donor services. Before joining the foundation, Rick served Dartmouth Hitchcock Health and Geyser School of Medicine as Director of Individual Giving and Gift Planning, where he worked with grateful patients and families, as well as medical school alumni to achieve their philanthropic goals. He also served Dartmouth College as an Associate Director of Gift Giving, working with alumni of the undergraduate college. Rick is a certified financial planner, a chartered advisor in philanthropy, and a chartered financial consultant. He holds his MBA from Baker College in Michigan and a BA from the University of Massachusetts. In addition, Rick is a volunteer member of the Marketing and Development Committee of the Grafton County Senior Citizens Council in Lebanon, New Hampshire. He serves on the New Hampshire Race and Equity All Work Group and the Civic Engagement Subgroup in Concord, New Hampshire. And not to be outdone, he is a new member of the Board of Directors of the International Association of Advisors in Philanthropy. He and his wife live in Concord, New Hampshire. So welcome to our show, Rick.
Thank you very much, and happy to be here.
Wonderful. So take us back to the earlier days in your career. How did you get into this work of finance and philanthropy?
So back in 1998, I started a career as a personal financial consultant, a wealth advisor with American Express Financial Advisors. And I worked with people with retirement planning, education planning, insurance, cash management, and just looked at things in a very comprehensive way and worked with clients both in Vermont and New Hampshire over a 7-year period. And my wife was working at Dartmouth College at the time around 2004 or 2005. And she said, why don't you see if there's anything at Dartmouth College that would be of interest? So I said, well, I'm not sure. My skill set and anything at Dartmouth, I'm not sure if it matches. So she said, well, just try. And so we looked at one option that came up, and it was Associate Director of Gift Planning at Dartmouth College. And I said, that's interesting. And it had to do with estate planning and a sort of a facet that I hadn't really explored in my role as a financial advisor. So I said, sure, let's apply. So I applied and I ended up getting the position. I was a very non-traditional candidate. Usually it would be attorneys that would be taking this role. So I left and I sold my practice, and I ended up going across the country and meeting with undergraduates or people who are graduates of the undergraduate college, and just talking to them very generally about planned giving, which was bequest intentions, charitable gift annuities, charitable remainder trusts, real estate gifts, with no pressure, just really kind of having the conversation with people. And then about 4 years later, I became the director of gift planning for the medical school at Dartmouth, as well as Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center. So it was 2 501c3s, and I would straddle both under the umbrella of the academic medical enterprise. So grateful patients, as you had mentioned in the intro, grateful patients, as well as medical school alums and what we call dual degree. So it was interesting, just alumni as well as patients and their families. And then I started to move into what was called major gifts, which is $50,000 or more from the college or the hospital. And then I started to move into what was called principal giving, which was $1 million or more. And the whole time I retained the planned giving background, and I still worked in that way. And I just worked with a larger team. I was supervising a larger team beyond plain giving. So that was really good. And talking about some of the largest gifts ever to the institution, you're entertaining a $50 million gift. When I got word of the fact that there was a VP position at the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, and I said, well, that's a really interesting role. I'm not unhappy in where I am. I'm very happy what I'm doing, but that seems to be something I have to throw my hat in the ring for. So I did. Around 4 years ago, I started interviewing, and then I got the position in May of 2017. And now I feel like my job is to not raise money for one or two organizations, but rather I kind of look at my role as trying to get as much money out to the nonprofits in the state of New Hampshire and beyond as I can through doing good work with professional advisors, potential donors, and donors. So it's just a broader landscape, and but very gratifying. And I feel very fortunate that my career has progressed the way it has, from being a wealth advisor, personal financial advisor, all the way through working for a world-class institution like Dartmouth and a major medical center like Dartmouth-Hitchcock, and now for the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, which is a statewide community foundation. So I'm very fortunate.
You've had quite a journey.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that you might have had some mentors and sponsors along the way. Can you talk about that and how they might have changed over time?
Sure. When I was a personal financial advisor, I always think of three mentors that I had. One of them was my manager, who was very good at sales. He was just a driver, go out there, pick up the phone, call people, meet with people. He was just super influential in my early days. In my first year as a financial advisor, we had to put 60 hours in a week, mandatory. And we had to do a lot of work with outreach. So that has definitely stayed with me even to this day, the drive to do outreach. And then there was another person of the three at American Express. She was my kind of pipeline manager. I was doing a good job of acquiring new clients, but I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to keep up with all the volume of the work that I had. So she helped keep my head down and keep me doing that pipeline work, so that I was working through the financial plans and delivering what I said I would deliver on. And there was a third person, and he was the technical guru around the software, and he helped me create really compelling plans and be able to explain things in a very technical way, which was important to me. So that was in my for-profit days. And in my non-for-profit days, I'd say it's a kind of a broad group of mentors. I mean, when I was at the hospital, I listened closely to the heads of the departments like surgery and medicine, and I listened to section chiefs. And I was really listening to, what are you trying to accomplish within your departments and your sections, and how can we be of service to you? What are you trying to raise money for the benefit of patients? So just listening to the real thought leaders, the ones who were thinking way ahead to how they can provide the best service and solutions for the patients at the hospital. And so there was that. And they were not obviously development people. My development work, I still had other mentors, and those were people who usually had soft skills, people who are really good at just taking broad concepts and boiling them down to talk to anybody of any education level, just about the why. Why are we doing this? Why is this important? And just speaking very much to the heart, because we had all the technical skills, right? We knew how to talk about charitable lead trusts and charitable gift annuities, but that didn't mean anything unless you were developing a connection with people. So I felt like there were certain people I met along the way that were just really good at just settling in and having a nice conversation with somebody about what's important to them. And then all good things came from that. It wasn't like you were selling, this particular thing to them. That didn't work. What worked was just to kind of slow down, listen to what was important, and then just kind of find solutions. And eventually they would come forward and make gifts of levels that people would be quite surprised at. But it was a lot of soft skill stuff. So, and that to this day has still carried me. Who do I look to? I look to people who can take complex ideas and boil them down to very simple ways of explaining them, but are also really good listeners about what people are looking to accomplish. And so I just seek out that kind of information and seek out those types of people who are really good at that.
That's so important to take those very hard to understand concepts that you might be talking about with people and just making it very simple, because I think when it's simple and easy to understand, people then take action. So
Right.
talk to us about the transition from Dartmouth College to now serving many nonprofits. What is that like?
Well, so I was talking to somebody about this the other day. When you work for Dartmouth College, you get to go deep on what's happening at Dartmouth. And granted, it's a very large institution. It's an Ivy League school, obviously, but you get to learn a lot of facets of what's happening. And I don't have to necessarily be an expert in those, but I do have to have enough to be able to bring the good news to the potential donors. That was true for the hospital as well. It's pretty broad scope, lots happening. No way I could master everything that was happening at the hospital, but I still learned the story, and I still got better at that story, the story of Dartmouth Hitchcock, or the story of Dartmouth College. Now that I'm here, I tell the story of the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, but I also feel that I have to have a little bit of the story of a lot of these nonprofits, and it's virtually impossible to know everything about everything, but to have enough stories to tell, especially in the ways that we can be of service as a community foundation, and connecting the dots and being matchmakers to the things that are important to the donors, the nonprofits that help fulfill those needs for them. That's the hard part, and yet it's the rewarding part. So I feel like the challenge is know enough to be able to showcase the institution and not feel that I need to go super deep. That's what I'm going to rely on my team for, the senior program officers and the people who are in the community impact department. They're the experts there, but I need to figure out a way to continue to make sure that those nonprofits are being properly showcased to the donors who are looking for that. So that's the challenge. I know a little bit about a lot of nonprofits versus knowing a lot about two different nonprofits that I work for at Dartmouth College and Dartmouth Hitchcock. So that challenge will never get any easier. It will always be, because landscape changes, new nonprofits show up, other nonprofits go away, executive directors come and go. There's always a story.
There's always movement.
What's that?
I said there's always movement.
That's right. Yeah, always movement. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about resiliency, especially for the nonprofits that you work for in your organization. How are you handling being resilient? How is your organization, their nonprofits that you interact with?
So there's two stories there. One is the New Hampshire the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation is quite resilient, and it's because we have $800 million in assets. We last year took in $46 million of new money, and we put out $47 million in grants. And so we are the only community foundation, statewide community foundation in New Hampshire. So we are a big fish, no question. And so in March, when everything started to shut down and everyone was going remote, we were very worried that we aren't going to be able to meet donors in person, professional advisors in person, potential donors. We can't do it. So that's going to really drive down our incoming revenue. And as it turned out, that wasn't the case. The reason we were resilient, I think, is because we figured out how to utilize technology and say, what's the most important thing? The most important thing is that we stay connected with people. So there's email, like we've always had. There's phone calls, like we've always had. And now we have Zoom calls and video calls, which we didn't do as much of before, but now we're doing all the time. So the lesson was stay in touch. Just keep doing the outreach and try to take, when we talk about the silver lining for me was we weren't traveling as much, we weren't traveling at all. And then we weren't going to events. So we could take that time and say, what do I need to do? How about more outreach, more connections? So that, I think, created a certain amount of resiliency in the sense that we were just staying in touch. And that was true for the community impact side, the money outside. They also were staying in touch with these nonprofits and just staying connected in all kinds of ways. The other two things I'll mention is we have something called the Community Crisis Action Fund. And that was a COVID-19 response fund that we launched in March, and people added money to that, came out of the woodwork and just were trying to help. So that helped us take that money, pool it together, and then strategically deploy it to the nonprofits that needed it the most. And we were very transparent about it as well. We would say, here's how much we've taken in through a blog post, and here's how much we put out. Specifically, these are the organizations and so on. And people responded really well to that. Professional advisors really enjoyed seeing the transparency. So then kind of linking that to another thing called the Nonprofit Emergency Relief Fund, those were $60 million available from the state that we had participated in a grant review process. We at the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation plus two other organizations, and we were reviewing grant applications that came in to receive some of that $60 million. So in this way, we were helping ourselves be resilient and relevant, as well as helping all these nonprofits that were applying, because as it turned out, $86 million was applied for in grant requests, and $58 million was approved through all these various criteria that were that the reviewers were going through, and then about $39 million was deployed, and this was over the course of the summer. So in that way, our ability to be resilient helped us step up and help other nonprofits who were receiving these grant dollars be resilient, because a lot of them were just hanging on by a thread, and they really needed those state dollars to stay open. And obviously it runs the gamut. There's some nonprofits that are going to make it, and some nonprofits that are maybe not going to make it, and some of them are right on the edge. So while they aren't doing their events, their once a year fundraising events or whatever they were doing traditionally to raise money, we were able to step up and help them do what they needed to do. So in addition to the grants that we were already deploying out of the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. So it was all those things: the Community Crisis Action Fund, the Nonprofit Emergency Relief Fund, and just the regular grant making and advising that we were doing to our donors all along. So all of those things, I think, created a certain amount of resiliency.
So I see this like trickle down effect. So because the foundation was resilient and figured out ways to stay in touch with the communities that it served, it in turn benefited those recipient nonprofits to get emergency funding, crisis funding, and also just to be supported in general, the type of support that you would have provided pre-pandemic.
That's right. Yep.
So talk to us about how you empower yourself, and how do you empower these nonprofits?
Well, I'll start with myself. I empower myself, I suppose, by trying to be a good listener and then translating that into doing my best work. So I look at it as I'm a pass-through. I'm a vehicle. I'm a vessel to help make good things happen. So I gain power by staying connected. I gain power by making sure that my team is aligned. Our team at the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation is aligned as best I can in my role as a senior leadership team member. So I have a certain amount of power and the ability to convene and aggregate information, use it for the good of the cause. So in that way, I sort of feel like I'm empowering myself and empowering my team, and empowering the foundation by attracting new money and making people feel like working with us makes a lot of sense. And then by doing that, empowering the nonprofits that we serve. I mean, if they have the money that they need, then that's going to help them do what they need to do and advocate for themselves. And if they don't have that income, then they're not going to be able to do the types of programming that they need to do, or the type of growth that they're looking to accomplish. And then also, I should say, we empower donors, because donors want to do their best work. They come to us because they could do all this grant making on their own. They could write checks out of their checkbook just fine, but they come to us because they feel like if we know a lot about what's happening in the landscape regarding what these nonprofits are up to, then it empowers them to do the best and most impactful grant making than they can do. And I can't honestly think of a better way to do it than through a community foundation, because we are so well connected. So sort of empowering ourselves as staff, empowering the nonprofits that we serve and support through the grants, and then empowering the donors and their advisors, the donors, their advisors, potential donors, to have the kind of tools they need and the resources they need through us to help the nonprofits that they care most about, or the causes that they care most about.
Absolutely. So it's a multi-pronged approach to empower others and do the good work that you're doing. One of the questions that I'm curious about is, what about self-care? What are you doing for self-care during this time? Because you're in a world that, there's so many organizations you work with that serve various communities who are in various socioeconomic stages, impacted by different health conditions and so forth. And, someone can look at the glass half empty or full, and, but it all starts with our own perspective and taking care of ourselves. So I'm curious about what you do.
So I actually have exercised more than I have before, because when I was traveling, I'd get up early or I'd come back late and I didn't have a lot of time to exercise. So I have made that more part of my regular routine. I would be running or walking or cycling and so on. And that's been good. I sleep more. I eat more slowly. I'm not rushing through things as I used to. So the hard part around self-care, though, is that by doing good work, good work leads to more good work. And so I'm not alone in this, where you're kind of getting up a little bit earlier sometimes to answer some emails and get your day going. And then you're kind of staying a little bit later to get those things done as well. So that can creep in. So that, and sitting still most of the day at the computer is not great self-care, but it's getting up and walking around and also just staying in touch with my family. My family's around more, obviously, like many people. Their families are closer and they're not out of the house because for various reasons. So I see my family more, so that's good self-care. We get to check in. We're spending more family time together, so that's good. But yeah, I think the struggle is just around the lack of self-care. Sometimes it's just the work is important. I want to make sure that I do the best I can do in being responsive, but that comes at a price, because again, more volume means more volume. And I haven't quite figured that out yet. I think 2021 might just be, what do I cut out of my day, or what do I cut out of my routine? Which is always, those are hard decisions. So I can make more room for the things that are most effective and most impactful. So I'll continue to work on that.
Absolutely. And there's not a perfect in this world. It's what works for each individual, and
right.
Sort of getting a little bit better every day.
Right.
So in closing out, what would you like people to remember about our conversation today?
Well, I guess that what I've taken solace in, at least in my job, is that there's a lot of bad news out there with the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of people struggling, a lot of concern and anxiety. And what I guess I've liked about my job is that we're part of the good news. So when things look bleak, when I've been on business networking calls, Zoom calls and such, I feel like I'm kind of the sole voice sometimes of, hey folks, here's something good that's happening. Here's where people are congregating, coming together in a dark time and trying to help out other people. And people really responded well to that. With a lot of the business people that I was networking with. They were just happy to have me on the Zoom call, just simply to say things like that. And so I guess if people were to take away one thing, it's that there are ways to help when times are dark. Sometimes people can be in a worse place than you are, and they do need your help. And philanthropy is nice because a stranger can help another stranger. And the impact of that can be, you can never really know the end of that. So just, it's like they say, a pebble in the pond, the ripples, you never know how far they can go out and what the positive effect can be. So just know that a little can go a long way. Focused philanthropy, or a focused approach on helping with causes that matter most to you, and doing that in the aggregate where lots of people are doing the same thing, has an amazing effect and can move mountains. And I hope that people know that the little that they feel like they're doing can go a long way, and never to stop focusing on the good work that can be done, and looking to the professionals that can help people do that, like a philanthropic advisor.
That is so important, is to know that each one of us has the opportunity to make an impact in the community. It's very empowering. Like literally one small act, one small step can just have that ripple effect, as you were talking about in the pond.
Absolutely.
So, Rick, how can people find you? Because we want them to find you.
So they can go to our website. It's nhcf.org, New Hampshire Charitable Foundation.org. Or they can email me at rp, Richard Peck, so rp@nhcf.org. And just you can go to the staff page and look for my bio, and you can read about me and read some of the articles that I put together, and have a conversation. Just email me and we can schedule a time to have a chat and see where things go, with no particular objective in mind. We could just chat and talk and see what's on their minds and see where things go.
So I'm going to repeat that. So Rick can be found, his organization's website, which is nhcf.org, which stands for New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. You can email him at rp@nhcf.org. You can look at the website under the staff page to find out more about Rick and the articles he has written related to charitable giving. And I want to thank you, Rick, for sharing your journey with us and sharing your positivity in the light of a lot of negative news out there, but the fact that you're encouraging each one of us for ways to help and contribute with our time, our talents, our financial resources. It's so important during this time, and you've shared how that has made a difference in the nonprofits that you work with. So I hope for our audience you take that advice to heart and look forward to the next conversation.